Twitch is such a funny story because Justin Kan, who's himself now like this B2B content creator, person, and has stayed very true to his roots.
Yeah. Sweet guy, super sweet guy also.
Amazing guy, yeah. And I've gotten to work with him in a couple different capacities. But if you go back in time, this was like early Y Combinator. And Y Combinator at the time was sort of viewed as kind of this weird, like, why would you even do that? And it's like all these kids in it. And it's sort of maybe for people that aren't legit. Obviously, they've completely proven that what an amazing idea it was at the time. And so Justin's project at that point was called Justin TV. And he basically would just go and wear this backpack that had a laptop that had connected to all the cellular networks, and it was kind of like all multiplexed together, so you get maximum bandwidth. And then that laptop then connected into a hat, like a camera that sat on his hat, and he would just live stream his entire life 24/7. I think this went on for months and months and months. And the funny thing about Justin and doing that is it was just, if you were working in tech at the time and you were like, what's Justin up to? You would pull up Justin TV and you would say, oh, he's doing the exact same thing that I'm doing, which is just staring at a monitor, coding or whatever. And it was like a little bit of a critique of your own life, actually, is what it turned into. But he just did that and for many years and for many months. And he ended up basically realizing like, okay, you could build a much more interesting company by allowing anybody to stream, not just Justin, obviously, but you can think of, going back to that atomic network concept. The atomic network was Justin and his nerdy viewers, including myself there. And so he said, okay, well, let's build that out. And so him and his co-founders, which include Kyle, who eventually started Cruise, very amazing guy, Michael Seibel, who eventually is a president at Y Combinator, and his whole crew, all really impressive people, basically started to work on a platform where anybody could stream anything. And the thing is, it kind of worked, but not really. I remember using the product during that period, and when interviewing them, they were basically saying, yeah, people would just stream pirated NFL games. And that was one of the major cases. And then other people would try to stream other kinds of, weird things, like people are cooking or they're just doing like random stuff. And the most interesting thing of and that went on for several years, and they got to a point where it was just kind of growing, and they were feeling weird about it, and should they go and work on another company or should they start a new company? And they ended up working on a couple new ideas at once, and one of them ended up being to take the really, really narrow set of streamers that were part of Justin TV that were focused on games. And they just decided, okay, well, why don't we make a bunch of changes all at once? Like, let's first of all make all the streams just about games. And I think at that point, they said that gaming was maybe only 5% of Justin TV. So it wasn't like an obvious thing to do. The second thing they did was, rather than making it about the viewers, because streaming is so much about viewing, instead, let's make it all about creators. What's the creator's incentive in doing all of this? And so they ended up basically making it about monetization. And one of the interviews that I had with Emmett, who's now CEO of Twitch, he talked about this, which is, it's amazing what happens when you are able to give any creator, someone on the internet, $50. For us, you may think, oh, well, what's $50? But for them, it's just like it's a huge aha moment to go from creating content just purely for follows and likes and views to being able to monetize it at all, $50, to a point where maybe every time you log in, that you're going to make a bunch of money, and then being able to go professional is kind of like the next level up from there. And so they ended up basically spinning this off as its own separate property. And amazingly, it was like very, very, and a very interesting journey, because it became all about League of Legends for a long time. Like, it was just about watching, people run that tournament. And then eventually Amazon bought them. I mean, I think a steal for just under $1 billion. I forget which year it was of the company, but it was probably like year 5 or 6 or something of the company. Yeah. And I think everyone thinks of Twitch as kind of like this weird overnight success, when in reality, you see all the stops and starts along the way, for it to become the success that it is.
Do you have any insight into how they made the decision to focus on gaming? There must have been some rationale behind it. Do you know why?
Yeah, I think they were just seeing, and I think this is true of a lot of these network effect-driven companies, that it's not just one network. It's actually a lot of different networks kind of all under one roof, right? So if you think about what Twitch or what Justin TV was at the time, it was gaming, but it was also sports, and it was also creative stuff, and it was also, all these other things. And I think the most interesting part of the early data was that they saw that there was just so much more engagement in this narrow niche. And so even though it wasn't clear that this was going to be a big idea, and this is for a long time, people just didn't understand Twitch, they could see that there was a small group of people that were just like fanatical about it. And so if you chase that, often then you can kind of expand that goodness. And maybe there's a whole product that's just about that. And I think that's often very counterintuitive, because especially when you're at a bigger company, you end up being very oriented around like, can this be big enough? Can this move the needle enough? And you end up not chasing these little things, which is what one of the amazing parts that a startup can actually do, is they can just focus very much on that and expand from there.
Well, the other aspect of this that hops to mind for me, and please feel free to dismantle this if this is not sort of plausible observation, but it seems consistently underestimated how much a good company / service can expand the market, right? So in the case of Twitch, it's by virtue of creating these tools and catering to creators, they increase the number of people drawn to create, right?
Yes.
So in other words, if you were to look at the market analysis of what that could become prior to them creating all of these tools, it would be somewhat misleading, in the same way that a lot of people, hundreds of people said no to funding Uber on AngelList because they said, well, how big is the current total addressable market of black sedans really? And then if you only get 5% of that, that's a tiny company. Of course, not taking into account that the existence of the technology and enabling everyone to become, or many people to become, drivers automatically multiplies the size of that pie over and over and over and over again.
That's right. Well, and I think if you really look at it, Twitch unlocked the ability. I think Twitch and Patreon and Substack, and there's a couple of these companies that are now kind of part of the creator economy, really reinvented, I think, the just really made it so that people could think, wow, like instead of starting a small business, doing the kinds of things that people did back in the day, you open a small coffee shop or you do whatever, it's like, you can make millions of dollars a year being a content creator on the internet. And it really solves, I think, something that I think that has been called the original sin of the internet, which is that we have an advertising-based system, right? Like how much of the privacy issues that people talk about and the targeting, and all the stuff that's been happening is really because we decided to go with banner ads instead of having people pay each other online. And I think we're kind of in this really interesting point of the ecosystem where we're able to kind of unlock that. There was a really funny poll that Lego actually ran where they surveyed a bunch of kids. It was like 3,000 kids, and asked them what are the professions that they wanted to do. And if you look at the results, maybe it's both funny and maybe dystopian, that very high up on the list, the first thing on the list is being a YouTuber is actually like the top job.
Wow.
And it was above teacher, athlete, musician, and then the last one on the list was being an astronaut. So no one wants to be an astronaut; they want to be YouTubers. This might be bad, but but it is really interesting. And I think Twitch actually was so early in all this because they built all these tools, exactly what you're saying. They basically became a way for people to earn a new kind of living, right? Which is amazing because not everyone wants to drive a car, not everyone wants to deliver food or sell Beanie Babies on the internet, but like there are new kinds of work that are forming. And if these kinds of work are more compelling, you get paid more, they're more interesting than a lot of the hourly work that we have in America, well, what's going to happen is like a lot of people are going to try to be these things. Yeah. And this whole technology layer is going to support this new type of work that's going to emerge. And so we often think of kind of the information age as very much like a white collar kind of, you sit at a desk and you're writing documents or whatever. But I think that actually a lot of this will probably lead to a ton of jobs being created, a lot of work being created that's of ultimately a creative nature.
Yeah.
And then that may be really what people are more excited about than doing the kind of hourly work that's available.